What's up, everybody? Welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Fiso Mbuso Kaba, and if you were watching our previous channel, our previous video, then you are not new to the content of the channel. You already know what it is. It's social political commentary, and today we're going to be talking about mental health issues. So it's going to be a series of videos. I'm hoping that it all goes well, but at most we're going to be focusing on the spike in mental health issues, because apart from the fact that there's close to 300 million people around the world who are diagnosed clinically with mental health illnesses or mental health related illnesses, there are a huge number of people who cannot even afford to get themselves to a professional so that they are professionally diagnosed with such. So where does that leave us? That means that a lot of people go through things and they don't even know what to call them. So the most famously mentioned or the most mentioned word when it comes to mental health is anxiety and depression. So, and most people would self-diagnose, and one would say, no, you know what, I've got anxiety. Another one would say, you know what, I think I'm depressed. I think I'm going through a lot. And who could blame them? Honestly speaking, most people would downplay the fact that post-colonial depression or post-colonial oppression has little to no effects to our mental health today. But I seek to differ, because I've seen how the colonial dispossession and all of its effects, more especially because we are in Africa and not so long we are celebrating African Independence Day. The material conditions on the ground, somehow, one way or another, right, they affect what is happening to us mentally. I saw a quote by somebody who said, "You are not depressed, you are oppressed." And it gave me a thought that perhaps that's where the problem is. Perhaps we can't get ourselves to change how we are affected by mental health if we cannot change material conditions on the ground. But in as much as that makes broad sense, the question then would be, can you even play any role or get yourself to a position where you are able to fight yourself out of a mental health issue, if or rather out of a material condition that you're facing, if your mental health is not intact? Because the war against poverty, the war against deprivation of certain things and privileges needs you to be mentally strong. If you are still not mentally stable, you can't even fight a day to get out of bed. So in as much as we can ask ourselves, are we depressed because we're facing material conditions on the ground? We must ask ourselves also, can we ever win the fight against depression and anxiety if we are not mentally ready? That's why you need a psychologist. But one of the reasons why we've seen a spike recently, out of the 300 million people who are diagnosed and those who are not diagnosed, which I believe is also millions of people who cannot get themselves to a proper medical professional to diagnose them, what we have seen is that there's a prevalence of how much mental health is being mentioned, be it on your soapies, be it on your series, movies, you name them. But most of our entertainment spaces and social media spaces have a mention of mental health. So this means that it leads more people to self-diagnose as depressed and more people to self-diagnose as anxiety or as anxious. So this is one of the reasons. But the second reason is the fact that we have borrowed out our self-validation to other people. And with social media having so much dopamine that it spills into our minds, even young kids now have neglected the park for their phones. So you have grown young adults who have given their self-validation questions to who likes your pictures the most, more than you have young adults who know that they are enough validated even without anybody liking their pictures. So there is a degree of comparison. When social media was designed for connection and sharing of information, it is a human trait that when you are almost within the same age group with others, you start comparing yourself with those. That's one of the reasons why depression and anxiety spikes. Because if you feel like you are not at a certain level where you want to be at a certain time that you thought you would be, then you start feeling like you're not doing enough to be yourself. And then that spikes up depression. So you get to a point where you feel like you're not achieving enough simply because somebody else is achieving more than what you've got at the time. And now remember I said it that with a question of most people having to start off as previously disadvantaged race groups, and then now with an advantage of race groups, but not an advantage of making them rich enough materially, that spikes how you compare yourself. And dopamine has no thin line. It does not reflect all of these that I'm mentioning. So as a matter of which, you find that people will feel like, you know what, I'm not doing enough. Maybe I'm not enough. And the other thing is that the hope that we could control things that we can't control, that on its own spikes up our anxiety, because anxiety becomes a monster that feeds off from the fact that you can't change a certain situation when you forcefully wish you could. So we've got all of these things spiraling up how we feel, spiraling up how we react to situations, and at the very end, these things keep us captive. So there's an array of reasons that could come with. But on my next video, I want us to discuss on how best do you beat depression, how best do you beat anxiety, how do you get yourself out of that bed and have a few and smallest things to celebrate that can get you to the biggest thing, which will have your days becoming goals and becoming goals that you achieve. Tune in on my next video and let's discuss it. Thank you.